It was just past midnight when Daniel Hayes heard the sound that would change his life forever, a faint, broken cry echoing through the trees behind his old farmhouse. At first, he thought it was an injured animal. His German shepherd, Max, lifted his head, ears twitching, a low growl rumbling in his throat. The storm outside had left everything soaked and silent, the kind of night when even the crickets stayed quiet. But that sound, it wasn't an animal. It was human. Weak. Desperate. Dying. Daniel grabbed his flashlight, slipped on his worn-out jacket, and followed Max into the woods. The beam of light cut through the darkness, catching glimmers of rain on leaves, the smell of earth and pine thick in the air. The cries grew louder, mixed with ragged breaths. Then he saw her, a woman, crumpled against a fallen tree, her uniform torn, soaked in blood, her badge barely glinting in the dim light. A police officer. Her face was pale, eyes half open, barely conscious. Her lips moved, but no sound came out right then. Everything inside Daniel froze. He hadn't held another human being in his arms since the night his wife died. And yet, here he was kneeling in the mud beside a dying stranger, his hands trembling as he pressed them against her bleeding side. The rain fell harder. Max barked, circling protectively, as if understanding the urgency of the moment. Before we go on, if you believe in, please take a moment to it. Help stories like this reach more hearts, and maybe, just maybe, remind someone that goodness still exists. Daniel knew he had to move fast. His phone had no signal. The storm must have knocked down the nearby tower. The only thing he could do was get her back to the house. Carefully, he lifted her, feeling the cold weight of her body against his chest. She was light, far too light for someone who was fighting for her life. Her blood soaked into his shirt as he trudged through the mud, Max running ahead, barking toward the porch light that flickered like a weak heartbeat inside. Daniel laid her on the couch, wrapping her in a blanket while he gathered the old first aid kit from the cabinet. He'd once been a paramedic, years ago, before tragedy broke him. He cleaned her wound, hands steady now, mind racing. A gunshot, close range, through her side. Whoever did this wanted her dead. He checked her pulse, faint, but there. He stitched the wound as best as he could with the limited supplies he had, whispering to himself to stay calm. The old trauma resurfaced, memories of the night he couldn't save his wife after the accident. But this time, he refused to fail. For the next few hours, Daniel fought the darkness in more ways than one. He boiled water, cleaned her injuries, monitored her breathing. Max lay at her feet, refusing to leave her side. When she finally stirred, her eyes flickered open for a moment. She looked terrified, confused, and weak. Daniel told her she was safe, that no one would hurt her again. She tried to speak, but the pain silenced her. She passed out again, and he sat there all night, listening to her uneven breaths. The storm fading into a cold dawn morning light revealed the full scope of her condition, bruises, cuts, and what looked like the aftermath of a brutal fight. Her badge read Officer Megan Lane. Daniel checked her pockets, finding a blood-stained notebook, a photo of a little girl, and a folded note that said, "Trust no one. They know." That sent a chill down his spine. Whoever had done this wasn't random, this was something deeper, something dangerous. Daniel decided not to call the police yet. Not until he knew she was stable, and not until he could be sure she was safe from whoever was after her. Over the next few days, Megan drifted in and out of consciousness. Daniel nursed her back slowly, soups, clean bandages, and the warmth of the fire. She'd wake up, whisper a few words, then fall asleep again. Sometimes she'd cry in her sleep, murmuring about a partner, a betrayal, and a case gone wrong. Daniel didn't pry, but he listened. He remembered what it was like to have no one to listen when pain became too heavy to carry. It wasn't easy. Daniel was a single dad, raising his 7-year-old daughter, Emily, who'd lost her mother 2 years earlier. Emily was shy, sweet, and curious, and when she first saw Megan, she was scared. But soon, her fear turned into concern. She'd leave flowers by Megan's bedside, draw her pictures, and whisper, "Please get better." And somehow, it worked. Megan's strength began to return, little by little. One evening, as Daniel sat on the porch watching the sunset, Megan finally came outside, pale but standing on her own. She thanked him for saving her, her voice soft and hesitant. She told him bits of her story, how she'd uncovered evidence against a group of corrupt officers running a trafficking ring. How she'd been ambushed, shot, and left for dead when she tried to expose them. The people she'd trusted turned on her. She'd barely escaped. Daniel listened, jaw clenched. He knew what betrayal felt like. He'd trusted the hospital that treated his wife, believed their reassurances until it was too late. He'd lost faith in institutions, in people, in everything. But looking at Megan, he realized that sometimes, helping one person could bring back a piece of faith. Days turned into weeks. Megan healed, helping Daniel around the house, teaching Emily how to braid her hair, laughing softly for the first time in months. It almost felt like a family again, something Daniel thought he'd never have. But the peace didn't last long. One night, Max started barking frantically near the woods. Daniel went outside with his flashlight and found a black SUV parked down the road, engine running, no plate stud. He turned off the porch light and went back inside quietly. Megan's face went pale when he told her. She said they'd found her. She begged him to let her leave, to not get involved. But Daniel refused. He wasn't going to let the same fear that once destroyed his life take another person. He told her she wasn't alone this time. That night, Daniel packed a few essentials, loaded his old truck, and with Max and Emily, they drove Megan to an old cabin his father used to own deep in the hills, a place no one knew about. There, away from everything, she finally felt safe enough to reveal the full truth. She had a flash drive with all the evidence, names, documents, recordings, enough to bring down the entire network of corrupt officers and criminals working with them. But she needed help getting it to someone she could trust. Daniel didn't hesitate. The next morning, he drove to the nearest town and used a payphone to contact a retired detective Megan mentioned, one of the few people she still believed in. They arranged a secret meeting, but before Daniel could return to the cabin, he noticed two men following him. Fear surged through him, but he stayed calm. He led them away from the cabin, taking backroads, until his truck broke down near an old quarry. Max growled low as Daniel realized he had no choice but to confront them. One of the men shouted, ordering him to hand over the cop. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a flare gun from the glove compartment and fired it into the air, blinding them long enough to run into the trees. He and Max hid until they were sure the men were gone, then made their way back. By the time he reached the cabin, Megan and Emily were gone, but a note waited on the table. It said, "Trust me this time." Daniel panicked until, hours later, he saw the news. The flash drive had reached the federal investigators. Arrests were being made. The corrupt officers were being exposed. Megan had turned herself in to testify, ensuring that justice would finally be served. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something deep in his chest, pride. He hadn't just saved a life, he'd helped change something bigger. Weeks later, Megan returned. Her case made headlines across the country. She was offered protection, a new start. But before leaving, she came back to thank Daniel and Emily. She told them they'd given her something she'd lost, hope. And when Emily hugged her goodbye, calling her Aunt Meg, even Daniel couldn't stop the tears.